Hi, it's Palmy here, and in today's video, we're going to be looking at 10 tips and tricks that have helped me to achieve my goals with Daz Studio. These 10 tips and tricks have helped me to create this superhero story here, Tiger Dragon the Rebirth, which is my goal. So I want to share that with you. And specifically in today's video, we're going to be going through tips 1 to 5 in part 1 of this video. I want to make this video smaller. I want to make this digestible for you so you can take action on these tips and tricks immediately. That's very, very important. Go and apply these tips and tricks as soon as you learn them. So that's what we're going to be doing in today's video. Before we get started with the video, I just want to point out that these tips and tricks can be used in any version of Daz Studio. So the current version that I'm using right now is version 4.15, which is allowing me to get the results that I want. And I believe at the time of filming this video here, it's the latest version of Daz Studio is 4.23. So regardless of where you are on that spectrum on what version you are with Daz Studio, these tips and tricks are universal. They'll allow you to be used on any version of Daz Studio. Tip number 1, turn off interactive update. Now what interactive update does is it tries to do the real-time calculations for any smoothing modifiers that are on for any type of clothing, any type of hair, any type of accessory. If there's a smoothing modifier on, it will try to do those calculations real time in this viewport as we have it. And what that does is very frustrating because it makes it very slow and clunky, Daz Studio, when you're using it. And if something is slow and clunky, you're very unlikely to use it. And it's very frustrating when you try to do, like, I'm trying to move this particular body part, this pose, and it's just taking forever to do this pose, and it shouldn't be like that. I'm going to show you a great example of here. We've got Genesis 9 here. Olympia 9 here, and I'm going to got the older version Genesis 8 male here to show you two extreme examples and how they differ with the interactive update on. So let's start with Olympia 9 here, which is Genesis 9 female. I'm going to just click on this body part here. It doesn't matter what body part I click on, you'll see the difference dramatically with Genesis 9 here. So I'm just going to move this parameter here, front and back here, and you can see here when I'm moving it's the actual slider here for the front and back here. You can see how slow it is in the viewport. Like I said, it's trying to do, because the interactive update is on, it's trying to do those calculations for this particular character, all the smoothing calculations in the viewport at the same time. It's trying to do real-time calculations. We don't want that. So it's very frustrating. Imagine you trying to do a poll and you're like, oh, I've got to like wait for this to happen, and it's just taking forever, and it shouldn't be like that. So if we go and click on Olympia 9 here in the scene tab here, and in parameters, I'm going to click on all here as well. And in the enter text to filter by, so I want to filter by typing in here interactive. So I'm typing INTR, and usually it comes up straight away. I don't even have to type in interactive. And here you can see interactive update is on. So I'm going to turn that off for this character. So anything associated with this character, the interactive update is now turned off. That includes clothing, hair, etc. Whatever's attached to this character here. So in this case, it'll be clothing here. And I don't think this hair is smoothing. Let me just turn this off now. Let me go back to the same body part here for Genesis 9 and watch the dramatic improvements. The dramatic improvement here. So front to back. Look how smooth that is, right? Just by turning that off, it just makes it so much more usable in the viewport here when I'm doing the posing here for Genesis 9 for this particular character here. And how much better it is in terms of like usage. The experience, the user interactive experience is so much more better. So that's why I recommend turn up interactive update. Now that's the nice case scenario, right? Where like this is, you can see the dramatic change here. But let's go to our Genesis 8 male character here, which has a lot of smoothing modifiers on here. So let me just go to this character here. This character here, Tatsu, is actually from my graphic novel Tiger Dragon the Rebirth. So that's from where this character is from. And so what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to just grab the same body part. It doesn't matter what body part. I can grab the leg here. It really doesn't matter what I grab. The interactive update is on here for this character, and there's a lot of smoothing modifiers on for this character. The clothing here, the belt here, the clothing on the bottom here, and I believe the hair as well. It's got smoothing modifier on as well for some reason. That comes with the actual product. For the leg, we'll do bend. And you can see I'm moving this parameter here. Nothing's happening on the viewport here with this character. It looks like nothing's happening. And you can see now that it's trying to do the real-time calculations. Like literally nothing is happening because it's trying to move it. And see there, and there you go, right? So that is the extreme example of interactive update on, and you have like tons of smoothing modifiers on for particular clothing that this character has, the hair, etc. And you can see how long that took. Very frustrating when you're doing your posing and if you're a newbie, you're gonna give up straight away. You're gonna be like, this is just ridiculous, right? Why is this happening? What I'm gonna do now is turn it off. So same thing, I'm gonna go to my scene tab, click on my character, Tatsu here, just to say male. In my parameters, make sure all is selected. Into here, the enter text by filter. I want to filter again by interactive, so INTER. Normally comes up with interactive. I've got a whole bunch of extra morphs here that start with INTR, but I can see interactive update here at the bottom, and I'm going to click on off here, and that's going to turn everything off here for the interactive update. So no, it's no longer going to be doing those real-time calculations in the viewport here. So let's go back to the leg here that I was doing and the bend here with the interactive off, and you can see it's a lot better, right? It's not like amazing because this character is the extreme example, like I said, the way the character is. It's a heck of a lot better than what it was before, where I moved that parameter for the leg and it wasn't even moving. It was taking a good 5 to 10 seconds for it to update. That's not a while. At least this way, it's a little bit better, right? It's not the best, right? Just based on his character. But again, I want to show you the two extreme examples so you know the dramatic improvements you can have with your Genesis 9 here, female or male, and then you got your Genesis 8 male or female. You can see the dramatic improvement in terms of the two extreme examples. Very important to see that. You need to have interactive update on. Don't worry about that. Let the calculations happen after you've done the pose, right? So after you've done the initial movement, then the viewport will update. That's absolutely fine. And then again, you can go and change whatever you need to as well. So highly recommend you turn off interactive update for each character you have in your scene. It's just going to make that posing quicker, and it's just going to make it much more usable in terms of a 3D rendering software that you want to use it for, or whatever you want to use it for. It's just make it more usable. Moving swiftly on to tip number 2, which is checking the VRAM of your scene. So one of the biggest issues with Daz Studio is, how do you know how much memory this scene takes? So when you press that magic render button, right? When we press here, render settings, and press the render button here, or if you're using Man Friday's render queue, you know that it's not going to just go straight to CPU rendering. It's going to use your graphics card to do the rendering, which is what your graphics card is designed to do. The NVIDIA graphics card is designed to be the workhorse, to do that heavy grunting, right, of the rendering. That's what it's designed to do. And we want our renders to make sure they render on our graphics card. So how can we do that? Now, if you're running Windows, you can usually check it in the task manager. I'm not going to show you that because basically sometimes it doesn't work, right? Task manager doesn't always give you the correct, or doesn't always find how much it's using dedicated memory of your VRAM when you are looking at your scene in Daz Studio. I think I found a better method which I've been using recently, and I feel like this is much more better, more accurate as well in places. Now, not always accurate, but definitely more accurate in terms of getting an overall memory of that scene. So you know that scene, when you press the render button, it's not going to just automatically dump to CPU rendering. It will go to GPU rendering. So if you are on a Mac though, I don't know what the alternative is, but if you know what that is, if you're a Mac user and you have an NVIDIA graphics card and you have a way of checking how much VRAM there is, put it in the comments below as well. Help the people out that are using Daz Studio on a Mac, because obviously I'm using it on Windows. That would be very helpful. So leave a comment down below if you're on a Mac. It's just a free program. So the free program is this one here. It's called GPU-Z. It's by Tech PowerUp. It is a free download. You don't need to install anything. It's just an executable that runs. Now, obviously, it's free. I'm endorsing this product. I just use it because I feel like it gives me the best results. You choose. If you feel like Task Manager gives you the best results in Windows 10 or 11, fine. Go ahead and do that. That's absolutely fine. But I feel like this one's more accurate. So you can see here as we scroll down here, it gives you all the information on your graphics card here, which is like, if you're a geek and you're into that, cool, fantastic. I'm not into that all that much really. I just want a graphics card that works. And then you have your sensors here, and you can see here that for the sensors, memory use, how much memory this particular graphics card is using, how much VRAM is it using, right? And you can check all that. So let's show you that in action right now. So again, like I said, you can download this. It's up to you if you want to download it. That's cool. So here we have Tech PowerUp GPU-Z version 2.6, which is the latest version at the time recording this YouTube video. There may be a new version out because they always updated this. Fantastic, awesome, right? So use the latest version, nothing wrong with that. I will probably be using the latest version as well because it's giving me the results I want. And here you can see the graphics card that's being used on this particular machine here. and you can see that it's the RTX 3060 with 12 gig of RAM. There's all sorts of information here you can geek out about. Now, that's awesome if you want to geek out about that, but we're going to just focus on that it's a 3060 and it's got 12 gig of RAM. The previous graphics card that I did have was the NVIDIA GeForce 1070 Ti 8 gig of RAM. Now let's go off on a slight tangent here. Why did I upgrade to a RTX 3060 12 gig of RAM? The reason is because there's a particular goal I wanted to achieve. So the problem I was having, because I'm creating these heroic graphic novel stories, Tiger Dragon the Rebirth is the first one I created, which is all done. And now I'm working on Tiger Dragon Book 2. What I was finding was that as I'm putting more characters in, as I'm putting more props in the scene, in the background and everything, it's just CPU rendering, right? On that 1070 Ti, it's going to CPU rendering all the time. It's going over the 8 gig of RAM that's allocated to my graphics card. Now, yes, I was still using the tips and tricks that I want to share with you in this video and future video. And one of the tips and tricks I was using was called layered rendering. So really basically roughly what that means is I was going and turning specific things off. So for example, I was turning off, so let's say here our character here, I was turning that off. I was hiding that character, right? In the scene tab, I'm going to turn him off here. And then I'm rendering everything else. That's going to bring that down, right? That's going to bring that VRAM usage down to under 8 gig. And that's going to allow me to do that. So imagine if I had multiple characters, I would have to be like, okay, this character here there's a character here at the back here, and there's this one here. I need to turn off these two characters in order for me to be able to render the whole scene. And then I would need to use the other tips and tricks I want to share with you in this video as well in order to remove this character and then render the rest of the scene. So there's a lot of time being wasted with that. And then obviously with the layered rendering, you would take that into Photoshop and use composite rendering to put it all together. That was just taking a very long time to do, very frustrating. So that's why I upgraded to the RTX 3060 with 12 gig of RAM, because now it allows me to just hit that render button, because those scenes are never bigger than 10 gig, right? So I've got 2 gig of like headroom to work with, which is fantastic. So that's why I upgraded to RTX 3060. So always think about what your goal is first and what the purpose is before you go and start investing money in a graphics card. That's what I always recommend. Don't just go and do it because other people are doing it, because that's not going to make your render look any better, right? Having a newer graphics card with 24 gig of RAM, whatever the latest version is not going to make your render look better. That all comes down to lighting. That comes all down to the textures you're using. That comes all down to your post process, right? It all comes down to all those 3 factors. And all this is going to do is, if you get a faster graphics card, is that rendering is just going to be a lot quicker, and you can put more items in your scene. That's all the difference it's going to make. So that's something to take note of before you go and start spending money, or start investing rather, on a graphics card and thinking that it's going to make your render look better. It's not. It's going to speed up your render dramatically, it will, and it will also allow you to put more objects into your scene as well. So that's the reason for upgrading, why I upgraded to a RTX 3060. Okay, so how does this work? Very quickly. So basically I'm going to go to the sensors tab here, and there's lots of sensors here that are like doing the real-time updates every second. That's cool. That's awesome. Again, geek out on that if you're all about this stuff. That's fantastic. But there's one thing I want you to focus on, which I focus on the most, which is this one here, memory use. And it's telling me that this iRay preview that I'm doing right now for these 2 characters in the scene with the dome lighting on is going to be just about 7.7 gig, right? So let's update it, 7.8 gig, which is plenty of headroom, right? I've got 12 gig of RAM. This scene is using 7.7 gig of memory of my graphics card. Cool, right? That's absolutely fine. Plenty of headroom there. I can hit the render button confidently, knowing that it's going to render right now, or I can do it in my Man Friday's render queue. I know that confidently I can leave it on overnight. It's going to render, and I'm going to be fine, right? Nothing to worry about. Awesome, fantastic. So there's a lot of sensors here. You can see like tons of sensors. I'm not interested in all this stuff. That's fine. If you're interested, cool, go ahead, right? Go ham on the geek out on that. It's fantastic. What I'm going to do is first of all, what I'm going to do is, instead of just clicking on sensors all the time and seeing memory use here, I'm going to click on where it says memory use here on this arrow, show, and I'm going to select show in GPU-Z window title here. So what that's going to do is show me this value here in the top here. So whenever I load my GPU-Z, right, whenever I load this software, it's always going to be here, the value, and I don't need to go to sensors. It's always going to be there. And what I would recommend is, if you're not interested in any of these other sensors, just turn them off. So that's what I'm going to do. Click on that that button there, and then I'm going to go to sensors tab here, and I'm just going to turn everything off except the ones that I'm interested in. So in this case, I'm just interested in memory use, so I'm very quickly going to turn these off because I don't care about them, and wait for that to update. Cool. Okay, done. Fantastic. So there it is. That's showing me there how much that memory is being used for this particular scene. Now obviously this scene ain't realistic because there's no props in there, our characters ain't posed, we haven't got our lighting from particular ghost lights maybe, or particular other lighting, spotlights, whatever lighting you use, right? It's not very realistic scene, but I'm just giving you an example here of how this works. So this is something I highly recommend. Use it. It's going to help you a lot. No more guessing, right? About, oh, I don't know if this is going to render in my graphics card, right? I don't know. I have to hit the render button. Now you don't even have to hit the render button. You hit the iRay preview. You turn this on, this GPU Z. It's going to give you a very good estimate of how much it's going to be, right? And this would even render in my 8GB NVIDIA 1070 Ti, right? I would be happy to render that because I know it's going to render. It's well under 8 gig, not a problem. And that would render on my old card as well. So highly recommend this. Use this if you've got a Windows machine. Again, if you've got a Mac machine, what's the alternative? If you know the alternative, if you know how to check how much memory your Daz Studio is using, put that in the comments below as well. Go and help the other people, right? You got a piece of knowledge, go and help someone that's going to benefit from your knowledge, right? Don't just keep it to yourself. You should share it. You should pay it forward. You've learned something. You know how to do something. Pay it forward. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just being a good human being and sharing what you learned, and you're helping somebody achieve their goal. And that's the best feeling ever you're going to get. When you help someone achieve their goal, you feel absolutely freaking amazing. Moving on to tip number 3, hiding unused geometry. So this tip is definitely going to help you if you were in my situation or are in my situation where I had a 1070 Ti 8GB graphics card, and you are seeing that your scenes are just slightly over, right? Maybe it's like 8.2 gig, maybe it's 8.5 gig. And what can you do in order to bring that down? And even though I have a 12 gig graphics card now, I still use this technique, this tip that I'm going to share with you, because it's just something that's ingrained in me now because I've done it so many repetitions, so many times. It's just like, this is what I just automatically do anyway. And even if I had a 24 gig memory card, I would still use this same tip because it works. And when it works, and when it gives me the goals what I want, it allows me to achieve the goals I want, gives me the results I want, I will keep using it regardless of how much RAM my graphics card has and it can handle it. I will just still do it because it's just more efficient usage of memory is just being used by Daz Studio and then by your graphics card to render this scene. What do I mean by this? So let's take a look at this scene here. This is a very, very crude example, obviously. In this scene, there is geometry that cannot be seen by you and me right now. So right now, there's specific geometry that cannot be seen. And you're probably thinking, Palmy, what the heck do you mean? Okay, let's look at this character here, Tatsu here. What geometry cannot be seen? It's hidden by the clothing, right? You cannot see this character's like thigh here because it's hidden by the clothing. You cannot see this character's arm here, like I'm clicking it right now. You cannot see this collar here. You cannot see this chest here. You cannot see this portion of the chest. You cannot even see the pelvis, right? If you cannot see something, then why have that particular geometry on? It doesn't make sense, right? You can't see it. Daz Studio knows it's there, but you can't see it. So why have this additional memory hog on? There's no need to have it on. So what I would do in this situation, after I've obviously posed my character and everything in the correct pose I want, I will go through each character and I will see where I can turn specific elements off. And while I'm doing that, I'm making sure that there are no like changes to the shape of the clothing, all right? Because sometimes when you deselect something, the clothing may deform a little bit. Now it's up to you if you're happy with that trade-off. Very important. 9 times out of 10, I'm happy with that trade-off. I will be like, yeah, I'll turn it off. It's minimal. You can't see it. It's fine. No one's going to know. Only I'm going to know because I'm the creator of this particular scene. That's what you need to consider as well. So very, very important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the particular elements off. So the shoulder bend here, the left collar, I'm going to turn this up as well. You can't see the right as well, so this is the opposite as well. I'm going to turn all this off. You can't see this leg here, left thigh. You can't see the right thigh, right? And maybe I could turn off this as well, the left shin, but I'm going to leave it for now. So I could possibly turn off. I know I can turn off the lower chest. I can turn off the upper abdomen, which is just this here. I could turn off the lower abdomen. Can't see it, right? It's there, but you can't see it because the clothing is hiding it. His clothing is covering it, rather. The pelvis, you can't see it as well. Click on there. Now there's very minimal distortions here, so that's fine, right? I'm happy with that right now. Again, I could probably turn off the left pectoral or right pectoral. Let's do that as well, right? Let's just go all on it and let's see if it makes a difference, right? It doesn't seem to make a difference in terms of that. It doesn't seem to make any difference there in terms of what I can see in terms of like significant difference. So I'm happy with the trade-off there. Very important. Now let's go over here to our Genesis 9 here. Now obviously the type of clothing she's wearing, I can't hide the same geometry, right? So I can't hide this here. Otherwise it looks a bit weird. If I go and hide that, it doesn't look right. So what can I hide? There's always something you can hide. So let's have a look at the midsection here. What can we do? So it seems like if I click here, I can hide spine too. And it doesn't seem to affect the geometry of the clothing she's wearing. Awesome. Let's try spine 1 here underneath. Awesome. Minimal issues, right? That's fine. Let's try the pelvis. Cool, pelvis is gone as well. So that is okay. That's not too bad, right? So you have to go through and systematically go through your scene and see what you can hide. There's always something you can hide that's going to help you save that geometry of the scene and therefore going to reduce the VRAM usage, and therefore you're able to render on the lower end of the graphics card. So this is the technique that I use all the time. Something I've built up over time. And it's helped me out significantly. So even, let's say, even if for example, my camera, right, we're seeing the back of the head of someone. Let's say we're seeing a scene here where our character is like, we're doing a scene here and a character's head is here and there's someone else over there. Okay, so let's have a look at all this here. See all this below this character here? I can hide all that below there. So I can hide the legs, I can hide the feet, the toes, I can hide everything that's below here because you can't see it, and that's going to help save that. We can't see the person's face, so I can go ahead and hide the eyes maybe, the mouth, certain things, right? You can really go to filter it down to really the minimal areas. You can go down and hide as much as you can, but always remember you got to turn them back on if you're going to turn it around or turn the camera around. It's going to look very weird there. That's what I do, where I go to the extreme sometimes, where like I know that if I turn off for example, the eyes here and the other stuff that we can't see, that there's no need for the Daz Studio to render that, right? To have that in that scene, the specific geometry, it's going to reduce that, and therefore it's going to allow me to render on my 8 gig card or whatever card I've got, right? That could make that significant difference. So that's very important. Now, obviously, what you want to see is the proof. The proof is in the pudding. So let me show you some renders that I've done before and the difference. So when you hit the render button over here, what you get is you usually get this window here that pops up, right? And the standard render, which is the one without any of this scene here. So it's this scene here, right? I've just done a standard render with the bones intact. Everything's intact. Nothing's been taken off. The geometry memory consumption is just over, say about 580 megabytes, right? 580 megabytes, which is okay, right? Geometry consumption. We're concerned about this here because remember we are hiding the bones, which is the geometry. When I turn hide the bones, so hidden bones render, look at the geometry memory consumption now, okay? So it's gone down by, what's that, about 10. So I think the previous was 579. And this one is 563. So it's about 10 meg, right? It doesn't seem like a lot. But now, when you add in multiple characters and other things in the scene, and you start to hide them, it makes a huge difference. So that's very important to remember, that even though it seems to be a minimalistic, right? That could be the difference between that render that you're creating going from CPU rendering and going from CPU rendering to going to GPU rendering. That could make the difference. I know for me, in my previous experience where I've just turned off a couple of things here and there, hiding specific geometry, and I'm happy with the trade-off, the geometry memory consumption has come down. And that's allowed me to render on my 8 gigabytes of graphics card. Remember, this is the graphics card that I've used to create Tiger Dragon the Rebirth, right? 176 page heroic graphic novel story, right? I've used it using that graphics card. So that's using this technique here, and that's helped me so many times to render those scenes in my graphic novel where I've used the hiding the bones in order to render it on my graphics card and not CPU render. Even though it seems minimalistic here, it does make a difference. Remember, a little makes a lot, right? A little bit of saving the memory here is going to make a lot of difference, because you will find that you'll be able to render on your graphics card just by making those few tweaks. I hope you're enjoying this video here, but we're going to take a quick break to mention our sponsors for this video, which is my book here, Tiger Dragon The Rebirth. This is a heroic action fantasy story that's going to entertain you, empower you, and inspire you. This is a story that I've created using the skills that I learned from Daz Studio and skills that I've learned from reading books about storytelling. And the reason why I wanted to create a heroic story is because I want to see more heroic stories, right? The heroic stories that I grew up with when I was a kid in the 80s and in the 90s, and even now, like we're talking Avengers here, right? And the t-shirt that I'm wearing, because I want to see more stories like that, where you see a hero overcome their obstacles, they overcome their doubts, their fears, and then they go on achieve their goals, right? They go and save somebody, they go on, save the people they love, they go and just save a stranger maybe because they don't know, because they're in danger. This villain is doing things that they should not be doing, and they need to, this person who's going to be in danger, right? And they need to go and save them. So that's what I want to do. I want to create more stories like that, because those are stories that I grew up with. Those are stories that I love. Those are the stories that lit me up, right, all the time. These are stories I would run home from school right? From school. The first thing I want to do, I want to go home and watch these heroic stories. I don't want to miss them out. I don't want to miss out on them. I want to watch them, and I want to absorb them, and I want to be entertained. I want to be empowered and inspired, right? And that is why I wanted to create this story here. So if that's something you want to check out, if you want a heroic story that's going to entertain you, empower you, and inspire you, link is in the description down below, and also in the pinned comments. Go and you can read 24 pages, right? Go and sign up to the email list, and you can read 24 pages of this 176-page heroic story that's going to entertain you, empower you, and inspire you. Now, let's get back to the video so you can learn those amazing Daz Studio skills that will help me to create this story right here. So tip number 4, reduce the sub-D of items that are in the distance. So this is following on from tip number 3. You can use tip number 4 in conjunction with tip number 3, which is what I've done here in this example I'm going to show you here. So in this render here, this is from Tiger Dragon Book 2 here, a scene from here. You can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters, right? So this is 1, 2, 3 Genesis 8 characters, and 1, 2 Genesis 3 characters. So what I have done in this scene is I have used tip number 3, which is hiding those bones, right? So for example, this character here, you can't see the geometry here. So I'm going to hide almost everything here, right? I'm going to hide almost everything because the clothing is going over it. That's absolutely fine. Same here, right? For this character here, I've hidden a lot of geometry for the legs and the feet, everything. You can't see it. So what's the point of having that geometry there? And for this character here, Ayame, our protagonist, I've hidden a lot of geometry here as well because you can't see it. So what's the purpose? I've done the same here for these characters here, the legs here, right? I've hidden the geometry here. And for this character here, I've hidden the geometry here as well for the legs here, right? Because you can't see the geometry. So what is the purpose? Now that saved some, right? That saved some of the geometry memory consumption. Still didn't allow me to render on my 8GB of NVIDIA 1070 Ti graphics card because it's just far too much going on here, which is fine. And then I tried this trick here, this tip here rather, which is reduce the sub-D of items. Because my camera is so far back, because I want to show everything here, right? This is like my establishing shot of what's happening in the scene here. Because my camera is so far back, there is no purpose of using sub D4 or sub D3 rendering, or even sub D2 or sub D1 rendering level in terms of rendering, right? There's no purpose to that whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense here. There's no point having this super high quality HD whatever, right? Because you can't see it from this far back. That is a waste of memory, a waste of space. It doesn't make sense to me because I'm thinking more like professionally. I'm thinking more intentionally now. I'm just not thinking, I'm not just leaving things as they are. I'm thinking more intentionally in my approach, right? More professional, I would say. So what I've done for these characters is basically turned off the sub D levels and turn the resolution to basic, because you're not going to notice the difference. You are not going to notice the difference from here. There's no way that you can tell from this particular render when it's in the book, right? Think about this, it's in a physical book. You can't tell because that is going to be very small in the book, right? You won't be able to tell whether it's HD, one character is HD or not. It's not going to make any difference whatsoever, but it is going to help you to be able to render that on your graphics card. That's very important. So there's a very important distinction there. Obviously, we can't tell the difference here. I can't tell the difference, right? Whether I've used HD for the hair or this or that, it doesn't matter. You can't see the difference. So once I understood that, I started to use this tip more and more, especially when the camera is further back in particular scenes. It's like, what am I doing here? I can bring that resolution down for particular characters, especially like here where the character is facing away. I mean, I don't need HD4 for this Genesis recharge or HD sub HD level 2 or whatever the heck it is, right? I don't need super high. You can't even see anything. It's so far away. All you need to see is like, yeah, this person's got hair over here. They got the skin here, or whatever the skin tone is, right? And you can just see that. That's what you need. You don't need to be like super fancy all the time. It's just being very intentional in your approach. So how do we do this, right? So for example, here we're going to do it for both our Genesis 9 character and Genesis 8 character, show you how this is done. So I'm going to expand my Genesis 9 character and I click on Olympia 9 here, and parameters all, again, I'm going to filter by text. So I'm going to type in subd, SUBD, and usually I'll get whatever I need. So for this example, for this Genesis character, we need to turn the view subd level to 0 and the render subd minimal level to 0 as well. Like I said, we don't care about this. The camera's further away, for example. We don't need the super high res detail. There's no need for it. And we're going to do the same for Genesis 8. So scroll down here, click on Tatsu here, and subd still on. So I'm going to turn that subdivision level to 0. Turn also this to 0 as well, subdivision level minimum, and also view subd level. For Genesis 8, I think you only get this extra option. Turn that to 0 as well. Another thing we need to do is turn the resolution to basic. So again, in my filter section, I'm going to type in resolution. So there is resolution level, and then click on base. And then same for my Genesis 9 here, resolution level base. So what that's going to do is for every item that's associated with this Genesis 9 character, it's going to put the subd level to 0, and it's going to put the resolution level to base. Same for Genesis 8 here. So whatever is attached to this character here, it's going to turn the subd level to 0 and the resolution level to base. How does that affect our rendering in terms of geometry consumption, right? So let's go back to my example here. So let's go to, remember the standard render here with this particular scene, right? If with everything turned on, with all the original settings, it was geometry consumption 579, right? 579 megabytes, all right? And then we hid the bones in tip number 3, and we reduced it to about 563, which is about 10, right? The difference is about 10 to 15, which is pretty good. And now when we turn the subd level, just the subd level to 0, and the resolution to basic, we haven't hidden any bones, right? We haven't hidden any geometry. We've just turned the subd level to 0 and the resolution to basic. Look at this dramatic drop here. That is insane. Okay, that's like 500. So if you go back to here, 579, right, was the original render. We go here. That's well over 500, right? 500 meg of geometry consumption. You've just cut that significant, dramatic improvement right there. What is that going to allow you to do? That's going to allow you to render that scene onto your graphics card, GPU rendering, and not going to dump to your CPU rendering. So that's very important, right? Look at this dramatic improvement. It's crazy. Now, I think the reason why this improvement is so dramatic is because Genesis 9 is like HD all the time, right? It's HD everything. So that's why I think this is very dramatic. But you can see if you've got Genesis 9 characters and you've got characters that are further away in the scene, your camera's back, you don't need that HD resolution. You don't need that subd level 4 rendering. Reduce that and look at the memory consumption. This is the extreme example I'm giving you here, right? But I've used this particular thing here, subd level 0 and resolution basic, for this scene here, right? Because there was no need to have that super high resolution. It didn't make any sense to me whatsoever because I'm being more intentional in my approach. And I want my rendering to be done on my graphics card. I don't want to render on CPU, and I want to save time. And I'm happy with the trade-off with the resolution, and I'm happy with the trade-off with the geometry, right? It looks perfectly fine to me. When this is going to be in a book, you're not going to notice a difference. I'm not going to notice a difference. You're not going to notice a difference if you're reading my stories. You're just going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters in the scene, and then you're going to read the dialogue in this scene. That's all you're going to do. That's a sub D level 0 with the resolution to basic. Now, what if we have the sub D level 0 for everything here and the resolution to basic, and we turn off the same bones? So exactly the same bones. I'm going to hide the same bones. What does that do to the geometry in the scene now? So let's go and check that out now. So let's go there. So for this one here, and then there's render for this scene here with the sub D level to 0, the resolution to basic, and I've hidden the same bones, and the geometry has come down to 62 meg, right? So let's go back. So that was 62 here, and it's 62 just under, right? It's just under 62. So there's like a point, what is that, 0.8 difference? 0.8 difference, minimalistic, right? It's very minimalistic because we've done the heavy lifting with the sub D level to 0 and the resolution to basic there. But again, it makes that difference. It could be that minute difference that's going to allow you to render on your graphics card compared to your CPU. So it's always worth trying, right? So this is what I did. I've put sub D level 0, resolution base to basic, and hidden some of the bones for this particular scene here. And that's allowed me to render on my graphics card, on my 12 gigabyte graphics card, not on my 8, right? There's still too much going on here for 8, right? In terms of this scene here, there's a lot going on with everything else in there, the props here and everything. So there's a lot going on in this scene here, which still wasn't able to render on my 8 gigabyte graphics card. So I had to do layered rendering. So what I did was I literally hid these characters here, hid this character here, rendered all this scene, and then I hid these characters here, showed these characters here, render this part, and then I hid these characters, and then showed this character here and rendered again. So I had to do 3 renders and then compose the renders together. Again, didn't save time, right? I wasn't able to, time was a resource, so that's using up time, rendering time. It's also obviously using electricity, the bills and all that stuff, right? It's using all that as well. But with the 12 gigabyte of graphics card, I could hit render on the scene, no problem now, it would do it. That's the difference. So very quickly, let's just show you everything here. So with the standard render, which is this render here with all the settings as normal, nothing hidden, the standard resolution, the high resolution, right, the standard sub D for each character, whatever it is, I haven't touched it. It's whatever comes with the character, and this is what we get. So with the standard render, the geometry consumption was 579. When I hid the bones, it was 563. When I just turned off the sub D level to 0 and the resolution to basic, left the bones intact, right? They were still showing, the geometry was still showing for that. Significant improvement there. And then obviously when I did the sub level D 0 with the resolution to basic and the bones are hidden, we got a slight, right, what was that, 0.8 difference there, or 0.7 something. But that, again, like I say, may be the key difference that's going to allow you to render on your lower end graphics card in order for you to do that. So remember, I've been using this since I was creating my graphic novel. I found these tips, right, that helped me a lot, and I've applied them in my graphic novel Tiger Dragon the Rebirth, which allowed me to create that 176 page book, and also allowing me to create book 2 now in a much more speedier way, but also allows me to just hit that render button once, knowing that it will render on my 12 gigabyte of graphics card. Give me the confidence to hit that render button, knowing that it will do that, right? So I don't have to worry about that anymore. It's just a case of getting that lighting right and getting other parts, the posing right, the expressions right, so I can focus more on other things instead of like focusing on like the geometry. Oh, will this scene render on my graphics card? Oh, I don't know. Oh, let me hit the render button and find out. I don't have to worry about that. Now I can just worry about, hey, is this pose correct? Does it look like this pose is showing what it needs to show? Is this showing what it needs to show? Does this expression of this character give the emotion that I'm trying to show? I can focus more on the more important things, shall we say, and the actual render side of the side of the scene becomes less trivial, right? And you're focusing on more aspects of the storytelling and other things. So that's the fantastic part of using these tips and tricks. It just basically takes all that guesswork away and allows you to focus on the more important things, whatever you're creating in your Daz Studio render. Tip number 5, group characters and buildings in your scene. So this is very important. When your scenes start to get more complex, like this scene right here, you need to group your characters. So group your characters, group particular portions of the scene, so you could turn off individual portions of the scene very easily. This is very important, especially if you've got a lower end graphics card. Even when I've got a higher end graphics card, I will still turn off particular portions of the scene that do not need to be in the scene, which is going to save, again, the memory of that scene, right, which is going to allow me to render on my graphics card. Very important. So for example, let me give you an example here. Each character in this scene has already been grouped. Why have I done that? So it allows me to hide them when I don't need them. It just makes it so much more easier to do that in the scene instead of doing it individually. Otherwise, it just takes forever, right? You're saving yourself, again, time, most precious resource, and you're making your workflow better. So this is more of like a workflow tip and trick that I've used over time now. So for example, here you can see that I've grouped my Genesis 9 female character and my Genesis 8 male character. What does that allow me to do in the scene tab? When I click on the hide button here, it's no longer visible for this character. Everything to that character, regarding that character, is hidden. Now, if this character wasn't grouped, what I would have to do is click on the character here, the name of the character, go to parameters, click on all, and then in this text filter by type in visible. So I'm going to type in VIS just for short. And here it is visible, right? And then all I need to do is click on here and it will turn everything off to that scene. That adds up over time. So imagine me going through a scene, have to do that all the time. And to click on that character, because it's not grouped, go to parameters, all, make sure all is selected, click on, type in viz here, then click that. That's like 4 or 5 extra steps, which I can just remove by grouping my character and just having one step, right? Very easy, very straightforward to do, and it just saves time. This is a workflow time-saving exercise as well. I can just turn off this one when I don't need them in the scene, and I can do the vice versa as well with the Genesis 9 female here. I can just turn it off, right? It's just a workflow technique I use. Very handy, especially if you've got a smaller graphics card and you're doing like layered rendering, which I still do time to time sometimes, and you want to do layered rendering, and you want to put the two composites together like I was doing with Genesis when I was doing my NVIDIA 8GB graphics card. This comes in handy, right? So I can just hide specific things. So for example, this scene here, which I rendered in with my 8GB graphics card, this is before I got my 12GB NVIDIA graphics card, these were all grouped. So what I did was I hid that one, hid this one, made them not visible, right? Using the grouped, because it's very easy. Just click that one button. So they're hidden. Hit the render button. Right, it's going to render all this scene with these two characters. Awesome. Now I'm going to hide these characters. So hide that one. Show these two. Show, right? One button clicks. That's all they are. Hit the render button. Now it's going to render all this. Right, now I'm going to hide this character. And all I'm going to do now is make this character visible and render this. So much more efficient, right? So much more saving workflow-wise. So that's why I highly recommend you group everything. Group parts of your building as well, or certain portions. So for example, these tables here are all grouped as well. So instead of me going individually trying to find the tables and everything, they're all grouped. So all I need to do now is just hit that visible button. So for example, I think this is like table 10 here. So I just go to table 10 or whatever the tables are, hit that group button, and everything associated with this table is going to be hidden. So I can hide specific elements, right? So there's actually a table here on the right here that you cannot see, that's off panel here, off screen, that's hidden. That's what I've done. And certain elements here as well to the left here are all hidden as well. It's just one click things I need to do in the scene tab to hide it. It just makes it so much more easy, so much more workflow, just so much more better. So I recommend you do that as well. It just makes interacting in your scene so much more easier and saves time as well. Very important. So highly recommend you do that as well. Now, one of the things as I was creating the video came to mind as I was writing my notes down for this video. I was like, okay, how can I improve this, right? Because I apply the always be learning philosophy. So what the always be learning philosophy is, I can always get better, I can always improve, I can always learn from others, and there's always a way to do something better, right? So I'm never thinking like this is the best way to do something. I'm always thinking like, how can this be improved to the next level? So for example, when you have like a million things in your scene here, tab, right? And you've got your characters here. So obviously I give my characters a name when I group them. So this would be Tatsu, and this would be, let's call her Olympia. I would call her Olympia, right? Whatever the name of the character is. As I'm going through the scene here, there's like loads of things, and I'm like, man, it's taking ages to find these things. Like, where are they? I know they're grouped. I know they're in there somewhere in this massive scene tab with all these props in there and everything, right? Even though I've grouped everything, it's still sometimes difficult to find the characters because you're going through and you're trying to find it, right? You're not always going to see the character. What can I do to improve that process? So this is me as I'm writing down the notes for this particular tutorial. I'm like thinking to myself, oh, why didn't I do that? That just makes so much more sense, right? Why didn't I just do that. That's a great idea. So what the idea I came up with is to, what I should be doing in future going forward now for all of my scenes is create a new group. So create a new group here, and I'm going to call it characters, right? And I'm going to put exclamation mark here just to make it stand out. Characters. And I'm going to do the same here, where we can copy and paste that really. No point typing that again. And click accept. So there it is. And all I'm going to do now is just parent this to that. So drag these down, bring it in there. Drag this down, bring it in there. Cool. Right. Now all I need to do is look for a group called characters. That's all I need to do, because I know all my characters are in this group and I can work from there. It just makes it so much more easier. I was like, this is so simple. This is so, how did I not think of this, right? And it's always something like when you're working through, when you are going through something, when you are thinking about something. For me, when I create a YouTube video, it's always allowing me to think more deeply about what I am doing, see the gaps in my knowledge, and then be like, well, what about this? I haven't thought about this specific thing. What happens if I do this? Oh, I've learned something new. I'm going to add this to my YouTube video now. Now I've got extra content in this YouTube video that's going to be helpful to someone who wants to learn about this particular topic in Daz Studio or whatever I am sharing my knowledge. And that's what I'm doing here. So I was like, why didn't I do this earlier? I was like, it's so obvious. If you just create a group called characters, parent all your characters to it, all you need to now look for in the scene is characters. You find characters, and then guess what? All your characters are in that particular group. It's like so simple. Why didn't I think of this? I'm sure other people have thought of this, but now I'm coming to this realization. So hopefully this will help you as well. Do that, right? Create a group, give it a name that you know that you need to look for, and then parent all your characters into that group. And then now I know that when I'm looking through the scene, all I'm looking through when there's like loads of things in my scene, I'm just looking for characters. Find characters, cool. Expand that, all my characters in there, awesome. Now let me just go and pose my characters, do what I need to do, right? Fantastic little tip there. This is a real-time learning. This is the always be learning philosophy that I aspire to, that I strive towards, that heroes strive towards, right? Heroes are always learning. How else would they defeat the obstacles before them in any comic book you've seen, in every MCU movie, DC movie, whatever, right? In order to defeat a villain or defeat an obstacle, they need to learn. They can't always use the same trick twice. That's very important. And you're always going to get obstacles in your way. And this is a great usage of that always be learning philosophy that I aspire to, and I hope that you aspire to as well. The always be learning philosophy, like apply it into your life. Once you apply this philosophy into your life, any obstacle that comes your way, you know that someone can help you to achieve it, overcome it. You know that there's a way to get over it, around it, under it, right? There's always a way to get around the obstacle. There's always a way to find a solution to that problem. And I've just found a solution here. It seems so obvious to other people. To me, it didn't. For some reason, I was blinded. That is fine, right? But now I know the answer. I'm like, dude, I'm going to use this all the time. So there you have it. Those are the 5 tips and tricks that have helped me to achieve my goals with Daz Studio, which was to create this here, Tiger Dragon the Rebirth. So I want you to now go and apply these tips and tricks. As soon as you learn something, you must go and apply it. And that's how you're going to cement that knowledge. And if you already knew these tips and tricks, fantastic, right? My question to you now is, are you applying these tips and tricks all the time, right? Because they're going to help you to achieve your goals. They're going to make your workflow better. And that's what I'm here to do, to make your experience with Daz Studio as good, best as possible, so you can achieve your goals. Now, don't forget, you can also check out this amazing superhero story here, Tiger Dragon the Rebirth here. Go and check it out in the link in the description down below, and also the link in the pinned comments as well. Go and check that out as well. You can read 24 pages of this 176-page book right now, a heroic story that's going to entertain you, empower you, and inspire you. And until the next video, always be learning.